struck
Listen,
with a
listen,
new
listen.
ballistic missile and said it was
It was just the Ukrainian missile that was a new ballistic missile, and it was so-called a Risknik, the Hazel. He said its deployment was responsible to the U.S. plans to produce and deploy intermediate short-range missiles, and that Russia would respond decisively and symmetrically into the event of escalation. No, we're just talking about how World War III is starting. I'm glad Mudahar's made a video about it. Let's figure out what the hell is going on in the world.
Guys, DEF CON Everybody... You know, guys, DEF CON Everybody Dies is probably one of the more interesting games you could get on Steam for like $10. It's
Yo, that's unironically really appropriate for the times that we're living in. Let's not make it light, because I feel like World War III is about to break out.
a strategy game where literally everyone dies. Because when nuclear weapons are brought in, millions of people are effectively wiped in the matter of minutes. Now, of course, this isn't a video review of DEF CON. In fact, I'm talking about the real world that we live in. Now, if you're somebody that considers themselves to be a prepper, you know, words like ICBM trending and World War III trending is probably, in your mind,
You're probably getting like a slight chub. You're like, I knew it. They called me crazy. I wasn't crazy.
At least some level of a return on investment. I think it's amazing to be prepping, especially for a world that is relatively wild when it comes to stability on a day-to-day basis. You know, in today's day and age, there's so many conflicts that one could say it almost rivals that period before World War II, where there was a lot of different regimes, a lot of different forms of...
Yeah, there's like a lot of small little hot wars all around the world right now. Yo, what's going on up here in India? What's going on with my boys up in India? Why are we fighting?
Expansionism that...
Namaste. Fine, namaste.
All led to the entire massive world war that got pretty much every single major country involved. And usually in that situation, you know, it was different back then. Now with things like intercontinental ballistic missiles and nukes, like DEF CON, everybody dies. So according to
Thanks for the spoiler alert.
Rockstar Games conspiracy theorists, today was the day that we were supposed to get any information regarding Grand Theft Auto 6's trailer 2. But if anything, we didn't get any of that, and I pretty much...
We literally got World War III before Grand Theft Auto 6.
Much expected it. What we did get was a lot of world leaders discussing actual ICBM or IRBM attacks. So early on a Thursday morning, a whole bunch of Russian actual like ICBM started raining hell from the sky. This is some footage actually captured and shared by Forbes.
I saw this video on Twitter. That's what I pulled up. I think it was yesterday I saw it, and I was like, oh my god, I think we're in World War III. Pakistan always wants to invade India. God dang it, Pakistan.
There's been plenty of other publications. One of the reasons why I don't make these videos literally like the day after it happens is because there is a level of misinformation.
Yep.
Sometimes you'll find people sharing like 4 or 5 year old Arma footage, Arma 3 footage. And
this is why I like waiting for guys like Muda to put together the information, and then we sit here and then eat that shit up. Like we have chopsticks, we're just with some noodles.
And passing it off as realistic, and generally where your grandparents might actually believe, oh my god, that is real. Or they might share like flight simulator footage.
Oh my god, aliens!
Pass it off like it's the real thing. It's best to wait maybe a few days so every single country can kind of respond, you know, and get their word out, so to speak. Now in this footage over here, it almost looks like just God is raining down actual like hell from the sky. Like this is actually a smiting that is occurring. No, what appears to be the case is actual IRBMs, not ICBMs, okay? So anyways, you can see that actual like missile barrages are going down. And where did this actually occur, ladies and gentlemen? This occurred in the city of Dnipro, Ukraine, okay? So basically what has effectively happened over here is some new type of intermediate range hypersonic ballistic missiles, so IRBMs, actually were carrying payloads that thankfully did not contain anything of the nuclear variety, thankfully speaking, and that's according to Democracy Now! Now, while it seems like the Ukrainian president decided to also respond to this,
the MRIV technology, multiple independent reentry vehicles? What is that?
This translation, I can't speak, you know, Russian, Ukrainian, or any of that, but one translation that came from, again, Forbes was, it seems one weapon delivered all the warheads. The telemetry, high and fast, indicated it was a ballistic missile. It had all the characteristics, speed, altitude, of an intercontinental ballistic missile. So immediately that was when ICBMs were being shared around on the internet and people were genuinely scared, right? Like if you ever
Damn.
want to think about the world ending, there's a pretty good website that I'll actually show you known as exitmundi.com.
So if you really want to be up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., and like, hey, are we all gonna die? And you go here and you're like, fuck, we're all gonna die.
If you followed my channel since literally the days of haunted gaming, then you probably knew that at some point we were looking at end of the world scenarios, and some of them came from this website. So believe it or not, we've thankfully passed some of these actual scenarios. But did you know that even if none of these happen, we still actually will end up going through some
What is this one? Why is there a cat? Meow? Apocalypse via cat?
end of the world scenario? For instance, in 100 trillion years, if humanity evolves to the point where we become actual cyborg human beings, and yes, some people believe this monstrosity could actually be a human being of the future, then eventually we would need to consume such little energy that we'd have to put our physical bodies into sleep mode, and eventually that would just cause us to eternally sleep forever, because as the universe expands and cools, the level of energy that was once present dwindles literally year by year. So this is going to happen to you in like 100 trillion years. None of us are going to be alive for it, but if humanity does make it to 100 trillion years, then they'll have to worry about it going forward. But it's also really interesting looking at some of this stuff because it also covers end of the world scenarios that might relate to things like, you know, massive global, like massive environmental issues. It might also, you know, relate to crazy end of the world scenarios that religion brings into the mix too. Like if you follow any of the world's major religions, you might actually, you know of things like Judgment Day, for instance, when the Antichrist comes. Or you might come across wild shit like Ragnarok, okay, which sounds awesome as fuck if it happens. But at the end of the day, the world ends
Go out with a bang!
and everybody dies. So that's just one reality. Now, the thing about it is, humanity has pretty much come into grasps with the world ending several times in the past, which is why I genuinely have a pretty positive outlook in life. I think no matter how bad things can get, I like to believe and hope that most of the people running the world will probably at least realize that ending us all is not beneficial in any capacity.
Yeah, it's probably not good for the bottom line if we shoot nukes out. You know, ultimately, long term, probably not the best course of action.
But then again, human beings are also quite disappointing, so you do have to worry a little bit. Now, the last couple days, what even got me a little freaked out about it too was a Russian actual government account was posting wild shit like this. Now, one account known as Dmitry Medvedev, I hope I pronounced that one right. Russian names sound cool as hell, but pronouncing them is a whole different story. Writes, so that's what you wanted. Well, you damn well got it. A hypersonic ballistic missile attack. So if you read this right here, woo, it literally does look like actual God smiting you down. I mean, it's kind of insane how this is happening from literally
This looks like fucking Space Marines 40K, and the fucking Emperor is coming down just shooting interballistic fucking missiles and lasers.
Above, no one can see it. It's literally like the actual like launch seems way bigger on the camera. Like if you actually look at it,
this.
It looks literally like a shooting star is hitting something, and as it hits the ground, you can actually see the explosion. Doesn't really seem as big in comparison. But again, these are fast, strong strikes.
Wouldn't impress me
now
at all.
again, this is a government account, okay, as denoted by the gray check mark in this situation. This is the deputy chair of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. So Russia's new nuclear doctrine means NATO missiles fired against our country could be deemed an attack by the bloc on Russia. Russia could retaliate with WMDs. That is weapons of mass destruction, for those of you too young to know about the last previous war that we were involved in.
I guess I'm too young, my 30-year-old ass, because I did not know what WMD was.
Against Kyiv and key NATO facilities. Wherever they're located, that means World War III. So, look, it's not as if no government official back in the day ever flexed the fact that they could end the goddamn world on a minute's notice. But to see it happen so close when there are plenty of actual active wars happening on a daily basis, especially in today's day and age, I would say I've never seen the world this unstable for really ever. It really felt like when I was a kid, the world was a bit more in terms of stable. People got along a little bit better.
Yeah.
But maybe that was just me being young and I just didn't understand the world as much back then.
No, I think there's a good tonal shift in that, and not good in terms of like I think there's a noticeable tonal shift from people being way more stable, compassionate. Racism was still around, but nowhere near as prevalent. I think we were headed in the right direction. I don't know what the hell happened.
But yeah, it's scary shit when you read this from an actual fucking state account. Now, even according to Vladimir Putin, the current premier president dictator of Russia, pretty much says, listen, what had happened was a Ukrainian military facility was attacked, struck with a new ballistic missile, and said it was.
It was just the Ukrainian missile that was a new ballistic missile, and it was so-called a Risknik, the Hazel. He said its deployment was responsible to the U.S. plans to produce and deploy intermediate short-range missiles, and that Russia would respond decisively and symmetrically into the event of escalation.
Was called Oreshnik, also translated to the Hazel. He said its deployment was a response to the U.S. plans to produce and deploy intermediate and short-range missiles, and that Russia would respond decisively and symmetrically in the event of an escalation. Moscow said it targeted a missile and defense firm in the central Ukrainian city of Dnipro, where missile and space rocket company Pivdenmash, known as Yuzhmash by Russians, is based. So yeah, it really was like kind of a strategic attack, but for like the last couple days, reading the words ICBM and World War III, especially if you're like a doom scroller, really on any social media platform, or it doesn't even matter if you're on social media, it really is just if you turn on the news for like 5 seconds when you wake up and you just hear that, hey guys, World War III is right around the corner, it does initiate some level of a freak out to anybody. So for instance, a US official on Thursday confirmed to Fox News that Ukrainian authorities were actually briefed ahead of the actual attack that this type of weapon may be used against the Ukrainians in order to help it prepare. So of course, when you read things like, Putin and US sources have confirmed the strike was not an ICBM, but the Kremlin also claimed that the weapon poses a significant challenge for anybody in our sector of the world. So those missile attack targets at a speed of Mach 10, which is 2.5 miles a second, okay? So
that's fast.
Fucking fast. Basically, according to this, the current world air defense systems and missile defense developed by Americans in Europe do not intercept such missiles. So A, it's kind of a weird, wild flex to show that, yes, we are as dangerous as you think. We're not a fucking paper tiger. But the other thing that also comes out of this is obviously governments have to be notified that this doesn't contain a nuclear payload, because this is when we get into territories of like continuity of government. So something that always fascinates me is what I always look up is the U.S. nuclear launch decision process. Now,
this is what you always look up? This is what fascinates you? Mudo, you and I have two very different interests, my friend.
Every single large country in the world has a response process. And to give you an idea of why they have this response process,
just in case some shit like this,
Control Association, a 2024 estimates that like literally the United States and Russia has like 90% of the world's current active nuclear warheads. So for instance, according to this actual like research, and this comes from the US Department of State, Department of Energy, and the Stockholm International Peace.
Dang. More, well, Aha.
Peace Research Institute.
We are number one. I don't know if we want to be number one in this.
They have like 225 missiles, right? France has 290. Israel has 90, which, Iran would probably have roughly the same amount. Pakistan and India, 170 each, roughly. And then, of course, if you look at Russia, 5,580 nuclear weapons, okay?
Well, difference there.
As compared to the United States, which appears to be the largest stockpiler of 5,748. I remember back when I was in like high school and I had my senior like civics teacher like tell me straight up a statistic. I don't know how true this is, that apparently both nations have so many warheads that they could end the world
a few times over.
7 times over. And I think still have nuclear weapons left over.
Yeah. I think it's only gotten worse.
Why do you need that many nuclear weapons? Okay, like we get it.
We can end. I thought the statistic could blow the world up 3 times over, like completely decimate it.
Get it, buddy. You got the ability to end humanity and progress within the span of 15 minutes. And that's how scary it is, too. Think about all the actual like advancements and achievements and history mankind has ever made. We now possess such weapons.
No, I'm thinking about what about the achievements mankind hasn't come out with yet. like GTA 6. We can't get nuked before GTA 6 drops out.
We can end our entire civilization in the matter of minutes. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years of human progress, all wiped within 10 minutes. I mean, when you really think about it like that, it actually is wild to really process. So when you look at things like the U.S. nuclear launch decision process, so they've got a whole bunch of like actual acronyms, but the most important ones are obviously CONUS, which is the Continental United States. And then, of course, you've got NORAD, you've got POTUS, so you've got STRATCOM. So to give you an idea about it, right, let's say at around the launch time of a Russian missile launch, 1 minute...
We're literally getting a breakdown of how to respond to a nuclear warhead going off. What in the world, Muda? You and I have very different interests, my friend.
Into it, U.S. infrared satellites detect hot plume from Russian ballistic missiles during a 4 to 7 minute long boost phase of flight. So satellites instantly transmit that detection data to early warning systems at NORAD, STRATCOM, the NMCC, and NMMCC. So at this moment in time, 4 minutes into the launch, okay, NORAD and STRATCOM, the early teams were like, all right, we actually got an early, like, understanding. Like, they're pretty confident that the nuclear threat to the U.S. or North America is pretty fucking real. So at this moment, 4 to 9 minutes after, if the confidence is medium or high, the President of the United States is then notified, and all the reachable advisors are dialed into the most insane Zoom meeting you could imagine. About a minute later, STRATCOM commander briefs POTUS on the threat and response options along with their consequences, and basically makes recommendations, which is we should fucking retaliate back. Because if you got thousands upon thousands of nukes, you're not the only one that's dying on the world today. So 10 to 15 minutes after an attack, BMU's ground radars detect missiles in mid-flight. Early warning teams confirm attack underway, and computers update predictions of which cities are going to be hit. And
I think this was like in the first Iron Man or something like that. But could you imagine just a nuke flying and you have to be one of the jets who are just flying next to it, and you're just looking at this thing like, oh my god, it's real.
Really, how bad things are going to be. Which, when it comes to nuclear war, it's all bad, okay? Like I said in the beginning, with DEF CON, everybody dies.
No one wins.
17 minutes in, President of the United States informs the War Room, which has been monitoring of the response option. So the NMCC challenges POTUS to authenticate the identity using the gold codes. So what are the gold codes for any examination? Gold codes are basically like the actual nuclear launch codes, and according to how they describe it, they're basically printed on like what is a credit card size like plastic card. They call it the biscuit. So you're supposed to like snap this into, and then you're basically supposed to decipher like the codes on it and verify that you're actually the commander-in-chief of the United States, right? Like it's a pretty it's like the world's wildest two-factor authentication, right? Like when you're on the phone at the end of the world, they have to do the final two.
India has apparently the material and stockpile to create 5,000 nukes, and that it's to, you know, rival kind of China's numbers, and that if China only has 500, India's like, nah, we're going to be the next superpower. But apparently you're only going to build it when you need it. Yeah, well, I think we all need it. If we're entering World War III right now, we got to...
FA check to make sure the president can fire back. The president is confirmed, and they have confirmed that they are ending the world. Like, when you become president of the United States, and God forbid a war actually comes out, you basically also are given the task of deciding humanity's future, right? Like, imagine waking up in the middle of the night during a wild shit hits the fan scenario and basically given a few minutes to confirm your identity and basically launch back the end of the world, right? Like, it's fucking insane when you really actually process it in your head. So then you start looking up things like U.S. continuity of government programs. Now, every single nation...
No, at this point, my anxiety is so high, I get off this rabbit trail and I go smoke a blunt. But we're locked in, baby.
Large enough in the world has a cog in process. So what a continuity of government basically means that at some point, if shit hits the fan, the United States has a line of succession and a way for them to come back from the ashes and run the government. One of the things that I always found super interesting that I very recently learned about was something known as a designated survivor. So this was actually something that was coined up when nuclear weapons came into play in the modern day and age we live in.
Jesus.
So basically since like the 50s, and of course this is a list of actual designated survivors, so these individuals basically get set aside during massive like State of the Union addresses where like, big leadership is supposed to be together. So in the event that a nuclear strike hits DC or like just blows up every single like massive leader, the United States
Correct, Demon.
always keeps one person away from any of these situations in complete safety. So if the worst case scenario happens, there will always be somebody to lead the government in some capacity, right? So it's wild when you look at every single route these people take. It almost makes it look like you're looking at the world's largest meth head coming up with the most insane shit because they're paranoid out there. But is it really paranoia when in a modern day and age people can be out to get you? No, that's just called being safe. Now,
And it's not even just paranoia when everything else is going on right now. It's just like you're looking at him like, oh my god, maybe he wasn't fucking paranoid. Maybe he was onto something.
look, I know that I'm kind of like trying to have like a goofy, fun, haha time talking about this, but this stuff really fascinates me. I get really wilded out when I look at things like
We
nuclear
have different
strikes,
interests, my
and I
friend.
look at, I mean, it sounds weird out of context when I say it. But I
Yeah.
get like really blown away when I start looking up all
Pause.
these contingency programs.
No
Because
diddy.
if it's one thing that really baffles me is that humanity has lived for thousands of years, but we're now at a point, a precipice, where we can literally lose our entire existence in the matter of minutes if world leaders disagree with each other, right? I think humanity is amazing in a lot of ways. And I think that, in a perfect world, we would all fucking get along. But clearly, in some cases, we just don't. All right, simple as that. I just think.
And also, like, I feel like this is gonna be bad to say, but if you try to control that and everyone's nice, then you really can't appreciate the niceness. So it's like you kind of need that chaos. You kind of need a little bit of like interaction with rude people to really appreciate the interaction with the kind people, and you need to be around jerks to really appreciate the people who are kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like there has to be a little bit of I don't even say controlled chaos, but a certain amount of chaos that you let into your life.
I think it's wild.
That way you can grow. If not, you're just gonna grow up like sterile, dormant, not very like full of life, not very bold.
To see that we could end ourselves. Now, at the end of the day,
Carrot and stick,
no matter
Elliot.
what happens, I like to just remind people that if the worst does occur, you really don't have any other option but to hold the closest around you and see the fireworks go off. It's one of the reasons why, while I'm fascinated, I've slowly grown to just accept all of this, okay? And I've learned to accept it because worrying about and doom scrolling about World War III isn't really going to be good for your mental health. At some
No, it's
point,
not.
you just have to understand that you live day by day, and if the worst ever comes to happen, then, you live every day like basically it's your last. You live every day in the most positive manner that you can, and you hold the people around you as the nukes fall. Now, one thing that always blows me away, and if you've watched my channel for the last couple of years, you know that I'm a huge sucker for emergency alert scenarios.
No.
So while I talked about the government
Brother, what is you and your damn interest?
knowing what they're doing, the government always has advanced knowledge of shit that's about to happen. Now, what about the government warning the people? So this is a real
Why would they
clip
do
that I'm
that?
about to show you, and mind you, some of the tones I might have to edit out because of legal
Why would they do
reasons,
that?
broadcast reasons, but also I don't want to like trip any possible EAS system that we're about to discuss. So back in 1983, this is one of the emergency broadcast tests
Am I about to get swatted? What the?
in Los Angeles, California. And it's kind of creepy. It's kind of like analog horror-y when you watch it. Check this out.
Oh,
This is a test. For the next 60 seconds, this station will conduct a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
Leslie, the people have a question.
okay.
Does Bluetooth actually work?
Bluetooth?
Yo, that sound is so. Yo, I'm getting chills down my spine listening to that sound.
So for the next like 60 seconds,
Yo.
people had seen this on their like TVs, and thankfully they put this as a test because usually in a real scenario, if there is the event of a natural disaster or the event of a fucking nuclear strike attacking
Very
like,
ominous.
California, Los Angeles, which at the time during the Cold War was a pretty massive target, yeah, you would see this, except it would not be a test. It would just be run for the hills, buddy, it's over. In fact, a real-life version of this actually happened at one point. I've talked about this before, but this is a real, actual message.
What?
So one of the alert systems in Hawaii actually kicked off, and they basically showed emergency alert, Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Now, you might be complaining about shit like Amber Alerts and whatnot on your phone.
When did that happen in Hawaii?
Imagine, like, just randomly picking out your phone and reading this. The amount of anxiety and fear one would have would be insane. And there's one user by
Yeah.
the name of Joe Walker who actually did capture some footage from the University of Hawaii where actually students were panicking once they saw it. Like, you can see literally
Yeah.
people running
You see the Amber Alert and you're like, wait, it's not a car being stolen about threat. Run. What the fuck, Mom?
for the heavens, running for any form of shelter once they read stuff like this. And you can't even blame them because it's just that wild. So for 38 minutes and 13 seconds, people were like, all right, I guess we're screwed.
13
So at
seconds.
this moment,
They had
state
that on a
officials actually ended up
stopwatch.
blaming a miscommunication during a drill at the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency for the first message. Now, to be fair, if you ever have done a false alarm like this, there needs to be some serious consequence for the government officials involved in it, because this kind of stuff seriously will just spread the most pandemonium to someone. Like, imagine 38 minutes of just realizing that your life might actually be over. But one real scenario where this actually did kick up, I talked about it about a year ago when North Korea
Whoa, this is kind of crazy. 4/13/2023,
was like firing
7:55 a.m.
missiles. And at one point in Japan, they started issuing this error to the residents of Hokkaido.
Oh
Now, while
my
I can't
God.
translate this actually was an evacuation warning because of a missile attack that was possibly about to, at the time, hit somewhere in Japanese territories. Now, the Japanese government said that this was an actual emergency warning. It wasn't a joke, but they actually retracted it as soon as they found out that the actual missile going out was not going to be landing in Japan's territory. So yeah, this is stuff that happens pretty much,
That's
for
insane.
a lot of countries, it's more normalized than it is over here, right? Like, if you live in Japan, if you live in any country where missile threats are like a day-to-day thing, then yeah, for them, their people are probably pretty like, I guess you could say,
It's so crazy. I don't live in a place where it's like that, so it's so crazy to even imagine or conceptualize a place where you have to, like, you can look up and just missiles are flying over your country and landing in another country.
I guess you could say the people living in those regions have become normalized to this kind of stuff. But yeah, it is just so wild that we live in this day and age where this kind of shit can just constantly be happening.
Nani?
Now, at the end of the day, thankfully, Russia did not launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. It was actually later revealed to be an IRBM.
There you go.
Which is one of the reasons why, again, I like to wait on these videos, because spreading unnecessary misinformation and pandemonium is never actually conclusive. I want to make videos that are entertaining. I want to make videos that are informative. I don't want to make videos that are going to be throwing people down into a pit of misinformation and pandemonium and contribute to that. So that's just one of the reasons why I kind of wait for these videos. I know that it's best to strike when the iron is hot, but in an age of actual misinfo, especially coming from some of the highest
Shout out to
branches of
Muda.
authority at times, is not something that you should be contributing to. But
That's awesome. That's exactly why I wasn't gonna do a knee-jerk reaction kind of video to that, because I wanted to see what the hell was going on. Plus, I also did have date night and other shit that